Well, people keep asking for a Q plus drop. Remember how that whole story with Q goes. But what we are, we're beyond that. We are called what's for the president's eyes only, the highest clearance you can get, which is what I worked in when I was in the NSA. So this is for the president's eyes only. Now, we told you what was going to happen. And if you listen closely in the last two talks, we said we're not going to have much to say for 2 months. And that was what, 6 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago, I don't know. Anyway, we still need to wait at least another 5 weeks or so before we actually get to see the effects of what has happened. Because what we're seeing now are the last death throes of the Demon Rat Party, but also the Republicans, because all of them were in on USAID, which has collapsed the whole world, because that was the vampire jugular vein, okay? That was the great gravy train. And so it's collapsing all of them. They no longer have the money to do it, and everything is becoming transparent. The lawsuit against Act Blue, we have to wait on that. It doesn't even matter whether it's won, and that's the whole point. People keep asking, when is Trump going to pull the trigger? When is he going to hang somebody? No, if he hung somebody, then that would stop the others from screaming loudly because they're so stupid. Because remember, the Democrat Party is a party of yelling, screaming, demanding aggressive violence for your own personal protected virtue signaling safe space. It's all about the egotism of the age. Steiner said that it is egotism that would bring down humanity in the war of all against all. And that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing a mini version of it because this is like an apocalypse to the Washington, D.C. crowd. Because for once, somebody's going to tell them they're going to have to obey the law. So what we're seeing is he's allowing these people, the people who yell the loudest, are the ones who need to be indicted the quickest or the first. They're just lining up at the gallows and putting the rope around their neck and then stumbling around until they fall off. We don't even have to pull the lever that drops the door to hang them. They're hanging themselves. And the louder that they scream, the more guilty they are. So we told you, we're going to sit back for 2 months. Some time ago we said this, and just laugh, because this is a comedy of errors. These are idiot people. These are the worst human beings who in many cases do not have a true spiritual nature called an I am. They are an automaton or they are a reptile person.
Could you say they're a type of group soul of a lower type human?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh.
I always wonder if they're my thoughts or hers. I don't know. But that's exactly what I was going to say. Whether you're a reptile or you're a locust person or you're a no I am person or a no soul person, like a lot of these MS-13 people, and I call them animal people. They're not really humans, and they don't have a soul, many of them. And this is because the overpopulation of the earth has cleared out the spiritual world, and all these people are down here, both good and bad. The gates of hell have been opened. The gates of heaven have been opened. The spiritual beings are riding down in their plasmoid ophanemes as angel manifestations everywhere. And we're going to talk about that, the blackout in Spain, in just a second. But we're going to talk about Trump now, because geopolitically, this is the time that those who have been following us can sit back and laugh. And so what I'm doing is just looking at and reading the results of the work that we've done in the past few years, numerous years. For some people, they're just coming to it. But we put it in the Truth History book, the Truth Will Set You Free, all the indictable evidence that they need for all these people. And so when you see these things popping up here or there, that this person gets caught or that person, they find this thing about that person or what, no, we've probably already put it in an intelligence report or in the Truth History encyclopedia of truth that we've created with Michael McKibben and Americans for Innovation. And so basically, we're just sitting back watching. And so far, everything we've said has come true. Now, we told you that the problem would be with Ukraine, and that's what I want to talk about next. Well, no, let's talk about America for a second. Okay, he says it again, and now because $8 trillion has been committed to new reindustrialization of America, because the decrease in the over expenditure of $7 trillion a year from the federal government, and the theft of American taxpayer money to basically fund a totally fraudulent system that is so oversized that all they had time to do was create the newest way to tax any flow of money that came under their control. That's what people in D.C. do. They put their tax on it. And so now there's going to be a law against Pelosi. It's called the Pelosi law, where you won't. It's being suggested that it's been put forth in the House that you can't have politicians who have money on the stock market. Well, Michael McKibben has shown you that interlocked directorships between these companies, especially with your 401k being on the stock market, is sheer insanity because there is no free market. The plunge protection team in the Treasury and the U.S. Federal Reserve, which is not federal, which is not a reserve, and is actually the biggest thief on the face of the earth at this point, right next to science and medicine. So the U.S. Treasury, well, he hasn't even gone there yet. They now, for the first time in just the last week, had to send back, 20-30% of the check request to the U.S. Treasury because they were connected to a budget line. There was nobody signing off on spending the money. There was no verification the money was owed. So for the first time since 1913, since basically Woodrow Wilson gave America over to the Brits, we are going to actually have books to keep track of your money that is stolen from you and your payroll, and then they tax you for gas, they tax you for your roads, they tax you for your house. Once you pay off your house, you still have to pay for your house, so they take it. This is horrible evil. It's called debt slavery. Babylonian Radanites invented it, and they have nothing to do with the ADL. This is an old banking broker system. And so Trump is fighting this. What he's doing is he's fighting all fronts at once because he knew he had to hit the ground running. And so he created the plan, which caused all of them to come out underneath their rocks, especially federal judges who now believe that they are luciferically empowered to tell the president what to do with injunctions which he doesn't even have representation at these court actions by these lower court federal judges. He's not even represented. So they give injunctions that tell the president he can't do his job. Well, there's going to have to be a bunch of impeachments, or they will just have to shut up and start obeying the law. And this is the problem. It's like a U.S. Marshal going out into the wild, wild West and not expecting to get shot in the back. Well, of course, you're going to get shot in the back. Of course, you're going to lose because it's the wild, wild West. There was nobody facing each other off for gunslinging. They were shot in the back. That's what the history shows. And that's what this is attempting to be. Now, let's go from America, which is just laughing at the world, because anybody who doesn't have an agreement is frozen because they don't get USA. Any country that doesn't have an agreement with Trump for tariff right now is a frozen country. That's why all of Europe is frozen, everything they send to America, which isn't much, and we don't need their stuff. It's just instantaneously enhancing our ability to not only reinvest in America and industrialization in building our own cars and everything we need, but getting out of the stupid stuff that caused the Green New Deal, the closing down of all of our oil, closing down of offshore oil, buying our oil from Russia, having Russia control our nuclear program with Britain. This insanity is the federal government basically needs to simply collapse and be started again, or they need to clear the House by allowing no lobbyists or lawyers there, which Trump said from the beginning, because that's what we recommended to him, and that's what he tried to do. And they put some laws in place. But remember, when you have demon laws created by the House and the Senate, it is supposed to be counteracted or endorsed by the Luciferic executive office, which has more power than the other three offices compared, other two branches compared. But now the judges have come to be the Luciferic, demon-possessed people. They're either possessed by money and greed and the 7 deadly sins, like almost everyone in the House and the Senate are, or as a president, oh man, they go straight to the god of death, Moloch. This is like Planned Parenthood, who literally was created to eliminate the black population in America. A genocide, right? This was promoted by the White House, or to blacken the sky, darken it, or create the clouds so that you stop getting sunlight. These kind of policies are pure insanity, and that is what Trump is calling out by his audacious approach. And everyone who speaks the loudest are the most guilty.
Douglas. Thank you for giving me the phone. I've got a great question. It's a burning question everybody has. You see, how will we know that we've won? And I say you just look in the skies. If you don't see any more chemtrails, we won. Which gets to the point that we are seeing such heavy chemtrailing everywhere. I think they're trying to block out the sun more than in the United Kingdom, but everywhere. And so I saw something today and went, wow, that's the thought. Where's the funding coming from? Because that's what we have to do. We have to cut off this funding source. And someone suggested it's coming from DARPA, that it's a program hidden in DARPA. And DARPA has got all these black ops going, and that's what is funding this chemtrail activity. So I put on Gab a bunch of articles that we've done on DARPA. I mean, DARPA is everywhere trying to control our lives. And just wanted to ask you, do you think that that is a plausible hypothesis?
Well, we've proven it for the last 10 years in all of our intelligence reports. Okay, so DARPA is behind all of it, period, because it goes through DARPA, In-Q-Tel, the Highland Forum, and then it becomes transnational. So if anything is horrible and deadly and poisonous and transnational, it went through DARPA, including the COVID-19, which went through the Department of Defense, because the Naval Office of Net Assessment determines what bioweapons or chemtrailing or vaccines or a poison in the food or fusion reactors or plasma experiments or weapons or EMF, which means 5G, 6G, 7G precision medicine, all the different weapons, all of that goes through one transnational horrible group that we revealed a long time ago, DARPA. And Highlands Forum, or Highlands Group, it's often called. And Yoda Marshall, they called him. They called him Yoda because he was the guy who determined how many people would die by a multiple warhead that we would create next. Or what do we demand, what weapon or what intelligence targeting and infiltration through electronics, how can we spy on people better? And what do? When they create these things with Raytheon and with Lockheed Martin and L3 and SAIS and all these groups that we've revealed all of, we've told you all about this. If you go on to Truth History, you can look it up simply by Googling it, by doing a query. And what you find, so all that Trump is doing is in fact declawing, defanging, and defrocking the most powerful organization on the face of the earth for depopulation, and that is Highlands Forum, DARPA. So yes, and you see that everywhere. You see, no matter, and they, how did Kennedy? What did Trump do when he was asked about chemtrails? He turned to Susie Wiles and said, "Can't we find that out? Can we find that out right now? Who do I call to find that out?" Well, I want that found out. I mean, what do you need, a week? I need to know who's doing the chemtrails. This was all on tape. That's why I love when he does these open meetings, which no president ever has been honest, never, and so certainly not since Woodrow Wilson, and they've been a British agent. So Trump asked, and then what happened? Well, remember, the radar for weather manipulation and weather manipulation itself were both farmed out to a Canadian company, which was British-owned Canadian company, and then they sold them just about the time that when we revealed this, within a year after we revealed these things in detail with pictures showing the money. What happened? The radar got turned over to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency, or administration, whatever it's called, agency, one or the other. So, and the Department of Defense, because of course the Department of Defense knows everything flying in the air. Don't be stupid. Of course they do. They knew every drone and the difference between a drone and a plasmoid. They were chasing the plasmoids with their drones when they put up all their drones around all the military bases, which is what caused that New Jersey obsession with people being freaked out over plasmoids. What did they do? Then they allowed probably thousands of people for disinformation to put up fake Chat GPT, AI, and there is no AI, fake pictures of UFOs to try to diminish the effect that they told us that they knew exactly what those were and that there were many drones in the area and they were completely aware of the drones. Yes, it was a military exercise that caused the plasmoids to drop out of the sky, just as happened with Spain, Portugal, and southern France. That was exactly what I predicted. If you go back to the last 3 or 4 Substacks and the talks on plasma and on the celestial cosmos, you will hear me say that since May 2024, the plasma incursion from the largest proton burst that hit our southern magnetic pole caused an infusion of plasma that created 2 new fields, actually 4 new fields, but the 2 diminished. So we have 2 new permanent fields of plasma, which cause plasma forcing coming in through what people call the aurora borealis and the aurora australis. Those are actually what's called the auroral electrojet, where plasma comes from a cold state into a warm state through the exosphere into the thermosphere, which is a perfectly natural process that Steiner talks about and is in our books. So what happened? Well, because the North Atlantic ocean current is failing, it's changing weather patterns so that you have huge electron diffusion going directly down the eastern collapsing side of the North Atlantic ocean current. That caused the aurora borealis, but plasma is invisible. Sometimes you see it in the aurora because it's in the high altitudes. But if it comes into the earth, you don't see it. Steiner calls it summer weather at one point. And it's so powerful. It's anti-man-made electromagnetism. So when this electrojet came down through the exact spot that it would, and also we see this in what I've been describing to you as the collapsing Gulf Stream ocean current, and then subsequently the equatorial stream and the Arctic air streams, they're all collapsing. And that's what's causing this big hole to happen. And the hole in basically with supercharged electrons, plasma, going into a hole that is created by simply heat. They called it a rare atmospheric phenomenon, never seen before, never named and never described before by science. Goes in and hits the Rock of Gibraltar, knocks out Portugal and Spain and parts of southern France. And they were in the dark, some places still in the dark. What is that? Now, we told you about the plasma possibilities, and it is not likely that what we have seen in recent days and weeks, usually within a week, solar activity would do that. Solar activity could do that the whole Earth with one burst of a coronal mass ejection if it was on the facing side of the Earth and certain conditions. But what this was an anomaly because never in history has plasma been so abundant in our atmosphere trying to protect us. And yes, it forces into the earth. And when it comes down, what does it do? It goes to places where there is extreme dirty electricity. All man-made electricity has dirty electricity. If you put shungite in the circuit, it reduces that significantly. But in general, there's a static electric field around the electromagnetic field of flowing electricity, right? And that's dirty electricity, and it's really bad. And plasma doesn't like that. So most blackouts are because plasmoids come down and run along the power lines and short circuit all of them. Well, that's basically what happened, except in this case it was a plasma river, a plasma stream. Now, normally this creates the beautiful aurora borealis because we've explained that in the books, but the point is this is different. But back in 1978, I predicted in our writings that this would happen and that you would see when the geomagnetic excursion happened, and we're at the peak of it right now. So the Earth's geomagnetic field is the weakest it's been in a long time. And they say it will collapse in 2025. The scientists are so stupid they use math. Math is used by liars, and liars use math. And math lies. So they calculate that the Earth is dead by 2026. Okay, that's the reason the climate change. They're talking about space climate, which they never ever put in any of their climate change stuff, not one reference to the sun. All of it is the sun, including these currents I'm talking about, the jet streams and the ocean currents. And so when these collapsed, it pulled in plasma, and plasma struck a weak system. How do we know it's weak? Because those are the very countries that didn't get on board with the World Economic Forum's cyber polygon resilience testing. Same thing with Iran, and same thing with the Houthis in Yemen, and the same thing we're going to see in all kinds of places. Anyone who didn't beef up for these attacks is going to be open for attack at any time. So we get to see again and again and again attacks. Now, jumping topics. Mike Waltz. Well, it's not a waltz in the park, Mr. Waltz, and Mr. Wong, your assistant. You're out because you use Signal. Don't use Signal. Use my skiff. It's the only secure system there is. All else is a lie. So if they think they have a secure system that the NSA can talk on, they're stupid. There's only one in the world, and we know the guys who created it and gals who created it, okay? So otherwise, total nonsense. He should be out. Someone had to be for blame. They couldn't fire Hegseth because he's got nice tattoos. Remember, none of those people on the National Security Advisory Council, on the Council, the Advisory Council, Homeland Security, which actually usurps the National Security Council, doesn't matter. The Joint Chiefs of Staff doesn't matter. None of them can make a decision without Trump. That's the way he wrote his new executive orders. He can restructure it. Any president can. They all do. And he's very slow on getting the illegals out of the country. The past presidents in modern times, they deported many more, but for reasons of their own self-aggrandizement. So going back to Ukraine, when Trump made that agreement with Zelensky, and he had to come to Jesus talk. Now, Zelensky, what did it take to come to a Jesus talk with Trump? He had to go to St. Peter's, the biggest Catholic cathedral in the world. Okay, this is where he had to see Jesus in Trump, and Trump said, dude, I know all of your criminality. I know Burisma. I know George Soros. I know about your oil fields. I know about the fake numbers you've given me on what you call rare earth, which isn't even rare earth. I know about your ports. I know about the false British explosions in your ports so that you could continue the war. I know about the $200 billion you stole. I know that you don't want to give up the 4 districts and Crimea, but 2 of the districts in Crimea were already in Russian hands. They voted to be there. They voted against you, and you killed hundreds of thousands of the people with U.S. taxpayer money buying the bombs. This is what he said to him, okay? And then he said, and first off, you know, you're a fake look that you are a warrior. You've never been on the battlefield, as we all know, and you don't care about your people. You're ready for all of them to die. That's the reason you won't do a new election, because no one will vote for you if it's a true election. This is what he said to him. Mark my words. And then he said, look, dude, you got $200 billion. We saw that you bought a $1.5 billion bank in France, and that's why I'm telling your gay boy here, Mr. Macron, you don't get in the conversation. Notice that Trump literally put his hand up and pushed Macron away when he said, oh, you can't talk to Zelensky without me. Because Zelensky is going to take his $200 billion and not just put it in Cyprus, he's putting it in France. It's the only reason probably France isn't bankrupt. Most other European nations are all bankrupt, and they have now decided, the European Union, all the nations part of that they will take 700 to 800 billion they will debank the people in their country to build up their military to go into a permanent war until they defeat Russia. That's what they have said at the EU. They're insane. Remember, politicians are the worst people in their country. They're the evilest. And when they go really high up like a judge, that's not okay. These are the levels of demons. They're called lies. That's all politicians. And they're specters. That means they get an elemental along with their lie, and everyone believes it. Then it becomes a demon when it becomes a law that is evil. But beyond that is a direct possession by, say, Lord of Evil, Malik.
Malik Brown.
Well, Lord Malik Brown is the perfect example of someone possessed by the demon Malak, which is human sacrifice. Well, pharmaceutical, that is the way we have the greatest human sacrifice on the earth right now. All vaccines are poisonous. They're finally coming to this. And Kennedy says that he's going to do placebo effects. Well, the placebo effect, get ready for this. You've never heard this before, but it's a fact. All placebos are at least 51% effective with any illness. In other words, there's no reason for you ever to take a drug, not a pharmaceutical drug, because the placebo does just as well, if not better. And 51 is the lowest. Okay, in some cases, it's, 75, 85%. The placebo works better. That's one of the reasons homeopathy, which is a sugar pill with a very slight essence of something in it, works so well. So if they do placebo testing, or they actually test for safety, which he says with all vaccines, they're all gone. If Trump gets rid of the IRS, hello, America's a different place. If Trump's rules go on for more than just 4 years, which it looks like one way or the other it's going to, and it ain't going to be Beta Boy following in his shoe, J.D. Vance, who is nothing more than the bunk buddy of Thiel and Elon Musk. It's ridiculous. So anyway, what's happening is when Trump got a reconstruction deal, the fund, Zelensky's only going to get his payoff by stealing his 50% from the fund of reconstruction. Whoever gets reconstruction in Ukraine gets all the money. So Trump gets 50% of it. He gets all these industries to invest without a single taxpayer dollar. He gets all the shipping from the grain when it grows again, from the coal, from the 4 types of lithium, titanium, and some other really great metals, but no rare earth. And by the way, those minerals are all exaggerated. But he gets the 2 oil fields. And then he gets to turn back on the 4 pipelines going across Ukraine, which was 40 to 45% of their GDP every year. So the second that he does this, he's friends with Putin. Putin gets his 5 districts. Zelensky doesn't have to go through a re-election, and Zelensky gets to keep stealing money, but Trump gets to steal half of it. It's an absolute genius deal.
Okay, and then, we called this out as an invasion for years, didn't we? And people were, whoa, it's not an invasion, it's just migrants. No, it's an invasion of illegals that are coming to overtake America, and they are the goon squad for these elites that are going to do the same from the top end down. So we called it out as an invasion, and it was such a great relief to see that almost as soon as Trump got in office, he called it an invasion. And if you look back now, you see invasion is a word that is used in the Constitution. So that there was a legal reason to use that word invasion finally, because now we can identify the invaders and send them back, but we can also see those who are aiding and abetting those enemies. And for that reason, and those are these justices in the federal and district courts. And it's also Congress people who will not get back and do the things that we, the peeps, voted for them to do. So we're looking at 2 categories here. And I say, let's suspend habeas corpus on these people, which the Constitution allows if there is an invasion of the country, which we've already established. And then that means that these judges and even Congress people can just be picked up, just arrested.
Because they're aiding in the invasion.
Yes.
And every illegal in this country that is in a sanctuary city that the law enforcement or the governor or any politicians are protecting, then everyone who's protecting them, including judges, doesn't even get habeas corpus. An illegal doesn't have any rights in our court. There's no such thing. How about the judge who just said that you can't arrest an illegal unless you have a warrant for his arrest? He has no rights. Where did he get the rights? Who gave him the rights? Now, the president doesn't have a right in the Supreme Court to question an election, which was the most fraudulent one ever seen in history, and everybody saw it that had eyes. But an illegal who doesn't even talk to the ADL is represented by the ADL, and they're actually in a prison in El Salvador, gets standing in a court ex parte where the president doesn't get to defend himself when a judge rules against the president. It's not against that illegal. He has no rights.
That judge is an enemy combatant of we the people.
Absolutely, and it is treason. So we keep waiting for the Insurrection Act. It's already here, and it's already going on, and we've already dropped, having soldiers being used by the president inside of our own boundaries. Posse comitatus.
Yeah.
Okay, it's already a done deal. It was never questioned. Why? Because the invasion on the border. When they come across the border, they become Democrat voters. Why? Because the democracy, according to the Democrats, is when you yell the loudest so you get your way no matter who you have to hurt, harm, kill, burn, rape, steal from, you name it. That is the new party of the demon rats, and they're proud of it. They're so proud of it. But here's the deal. They're just showing who they are. How about the idiot demon rats who went down to El Salvador, stayed in a luxury hotel, and one of them said, I'm not leaving here until this guy that was twice turned in for beating his wife, who he was never married to, we now find out, and those aren't his children. And even the guy who is the father of the children said this guy is such bad news, he doesn't want him anywhere near his ex-wife. That's who they're going to stay down there and not vote. In other words, abdicate their job. I say they're fired. We need to get to the point that we know who fires who, and we can just shorten that process and just let them leave. They just got to go now, so they no longer have any power. Take away their top secret security clearance, so they can't work for a military-industrial complex, transnational globalist DARPA In-Q-Tel group. That's what they all do. Or they go work for a fake, bad lawyer system, or like Comey. All he does is go from one law firm to the next, giving out all of his top secrets that he has so that they can be ahead of the game. That's why Mellon Optima is the number one hedge fund in the world. Their routine, what they get for their ROI, it should be illegal. Same thing with Pelosi. So now there is an app out that within, I forget how many days of any kind of movement of any politician on the stock market, you can follow it on an app and do the same thing they do. You can actually push one button for the Pelosi one and whatever she votes on. So anyway, folks, the reason there's been no Q plus drops is because what I just told you, I've already told you all these things, or else we've printed them, years and years and years ago. So if you've been following these things, you know that what I'm saying is absolutely true. And this is nothing new. It's happened in his first administration. But he did not understand the system. He did not understand. We told him there was going to be a series of people come into his office and say, Mr. President, you have no power. We have the power. Okay, that would have been the NSA, the National Security Council, Homeland Security. It would have been the U.S. Treasury. It would have been the Fed and so on and so forth, the head of the Senate, the head of the House of Representatives. They think they're in control, and that needs to stop now.